Welcome back to Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tabb, spiritually oriented psychological astrologer. This is the second show in my new series, Cosmic Costumes. In this episode, I'll be exploring the earthiest of the earth signs, the sign of Taurus. Taurus is the second sign in the zodiac. It occurs in mid-spring here in the northern hemisphere and follows Aries, the sign that launches spring. The imagery, the iconography of the sign of Taurus is the bull. And that has also informed the glyph, the symbol that we use in astrology to depict this sign. That's that circle with the lines coming out of the top. It's sort of the head of the bull is the image that is often associated with this sign. As I've talked about in the previous episode, every sign has an element and a mode associated with it. So with the sign of Taurus, it is the second sign of the zodiac, and it is the first of the earth signs. And there are 3 earth signs in total: Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And while each sign is different, these 3 earth signs have some overlapping characteristics to them. And we see that here with Taurus, that you may, if you are one of those earth signs or have studied some astrology, hear some parallels to those other earth signs. But every sign has an element and every sign has a mode. And so Taurus is the first of the earth signs. So earth signs in general are practical and dependable. There's a cautiousness that all earth signs have that Taurus possesses, because every sign is in response to the previous one. So where Aries is rushing and is far from cautious, Taurus, I sometimes think of Aries rushing and Taurus throws on the emergency brake. So there's a cautiousness to Taurus. There's a depth to Taurus, to those earth signs as well, because they do things with a deliberateness that the fire signs don't possess. They can create stability, like the element of earth itself in the natural world. And there can be a part of the earth signs that's about possession, because it's the most physical, tactile element of the zodiac in many ways. And Taurus as an earth sign is the earthiest of the earth sign. It's the sign that is most associated with the natural world, with the ground itself, with the trees, with the plants. And so that's part of that stability, that consistency, is part of that earthy energy, part of that Taurian energy. It can be literally hands in the dirt. Taurus can be part of that connection to the natural world. Now, its mode is fixed. So it's the first of the earth signs and it's the first of the fixed signs. Where all cardinal signs, which is Aries, launch seasons, the fixed signs fall smack dab in the middle of seasons. Taurus is that fixed earthy energy. And it's sort of what it sounds like. It's fixed. It can have a stuckness to it in that fixed quality. It is more focused, more concentrated energy. If you think about Taurus in relation to the seasons, it's the middle of spring. And so it's the most intense when stuff is the most blooming. It doesn't mean stuff isn't growing throughout the spring and summer, but it's when there's the biggest sort of leap that we see from seedling to things in full bloom. And so there's that intensity that we have with Taurus during that period. These fixed signs can have a magnetic quality to them too, because they're so intense, they can draw it in. That Taurian fixed energy can be alluring and draw our attention in. And that's part of why Taurus gets associated with attraction, both being attractive and what we're attracted to wherever Taurus falls in our chart. Within this fixed energy, there can also be a desire to hold on to things, to keep things close to the chest, because it's so tactile. It's so much about possession that it can also be about preservation and not wanting things to change, not wanting things to be different, wanting consistency. Taurus really loves that. That's part of that stuckness. It can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be intellectual. So grounded it is stuck can be the vulnerability, particularly when we mix the fixed with the earth, which is Taurus. The other fixed signs being Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. But when we have that combination of the fixed energy that is highly concentrated with the earth, can be very stuck, right? Like, this is standing in one place that I'm not going to move. The bull who won't be moved is very much one of the potentials with that Taurian energy. But within that what could be seen as stuckness, there you also have loyalty, right? So when we combine these energies, we combine the fixed with the earth element, with the natural world, then we get this Taurian energy. Then Taurus's key phrase is I have. Part of that possession, that physicality of holding on to things. So within that, then we have our values show up with Taurus. What is important to us? So within values, what's important to us, what we have, we see security or security issues showing up in the Taurian archetype. What we value can also be in relation to ourselves, our self-worth. Do we value ourselves? It doesn't just have to be external possessions and money. It does very much govern that, but that's not the only aspect of value and worth that Taurus governs. It governs all possibilities around worth and value, whether that is material or self. It can be intellectual values. It can be the value depending on what you have in Taurus. Then it gets more nuanced. That's this idea of these cosmic costumes, right? What is the costume that the planet is wearing? Some of the other key terms that we have associated with Taurus, in addition to values, is beauty. The natural beauty, the beauty of the natural world. It can also be of a painting or a fabric that is really beautiful. Because one of the things that Taurus governs is our sensory experience. In it being the most earthy of the earth signs, not only does it govern the natural world and our experience of that, but it also is our sensory experience. So taste, touch, sound, smell, all of that falls into the realm of Taurus. And our experience, how our senses interact with the world around us, falls in the realm of Taurus. Physiologically, Taurus governs the throat and neck. And so those of you that have that are Tauruses or have significant Taurus in your chart can be more vulnerable to having throat or neck challenges, more vulnerable to the neck going out in terms of needing chiropractic adjustments, or just having challenges around the throat area can be a vulnerability with Taurus. It's linked with the throat and neck in part because it's associated with that in relation to how are you taking in, having to move the head to take in the natural world. And that all is happening in the cervical vertebra, right? That's all occurring in your ability to move the head with the neck. Now, in addition to the modes and elements and the combination of those to help us understand a given sign, every sign is also associated with a planet. And with Taurus, we have the planet Venus. Now, Venus actually rules two signs, Taurus and Libra, but for this show, this episode, I'll focus more on Venus's manifestation as it relates to Taurus. In astrology, every planet is also given or is tied to linguistically a day of the week. And so with Venus, she governs Friday. Now, it's a little tricky in English to be seeing these parallels because English pulls from multiple pantheons and also has the language itself has roots in multiple languages. So it's not as cut and dry and straightforward as we see with other languages like Spanish. Viernes is Friday in Espanol. It's a little more complex with English. Friday is Freya's day, would be the root, the etymological breakdown. And Freya was the Nordic goddess equivalent to Venus. She was the Nordic goddess of love. So we still have the thread, same archetype, goddess of love, representing these different. We still have the goddess of love representing the same day, despite the fact that the goddess itself is different in different languages. But it helps us to understand the sign of Taurus, to look at the planet Venus, to see how these two are related. Looking at the planet Venus and what we in astrology attribute to her helps us to understand the sign of Taurus. Some of the archetypes we attribute to Venus is the goddess itself, the goddess Venus, her Greek counterpart, Aphrodite, Freya, where we get the word Friday. We also see Ishtar in Babylon, Inanna in the Sumerian myths. She's all throughout mythology, this goddess of love and partnership and beauty. All pantheons have a version of her. We also, from a more Taurian lens, we could look to even Gaia or Mother Earth being a possible manifestation of that Taurian Venusian energy, because Taurus being the most earthy of the earth signs, one of the ways we could interpret it is literally Mother Earth or Gaia in the Greek myth, or Pachamama that is often used in South and Central America. And some of the threads we could see as well to this archetype is Hathor in ancient Egypt was a cow-headed goddess, which is a very direct thread from this Taurian imagery of the bull and Venus. And the cow-headed goddess was very much associated with all these Taurian Venusian energies, and that was their representation of it. And in general, Taurus tied to this idea of the beauty of things, the beauty of objects, the beauty of the land. And so part of that archetype is the keeper of the land. That's part of this thread then to Gaia and Mother Earth that we can see with this Taurian archetype, honoring the earth itself. Now, one of the things that becomes interesting with the planet Venus is that what's called her synodic cycle and her actual orbit in relation to the sun. Even though in astrology we're very geocentric, we're earth focused, we're looking at how a planet moves from our perspective on earth. We also combine that with its relationship to the sun and the earth. We're looking at that trilogy. And one of the things that the ancients discovered, and for a while they actually thought it was two different stars, is that sometimes Venus rises prior to the sun and the star is visible pre-dawn. And other times we see the star after sunset and she's called evening star. So earlier in antiquity, prior to them realizing that this actually was a single star that changed where she rose and set, they actually broke down the mythology into two different stars, two different manifestations. And she still does this shift of sometimes she's morning star for several months, and then she's evening star for several months. And in looking at these two different expressions of pre-dawn versus evening, we see the breakdown, the fact that she governs two different signs still. And her Taurian manifestation is as morning star. And here is where we see the earth goddess manifestation of Venus as opposed to the Libra, which is much more partnership oriented when she's evening star. So in this earlier in the day manifestation of her, that she's only visible pre-dawn, we see this earth goddess, this warrior goddess. She's leading the charge, literally. She's rising ahead of the sun. And so there's a passionate piece to this. There's an impulsiveness of getting ahead of the sun, of rising first, quite literally. And so there's an assertiveness to this energy. And that's part of that Taurian bull that sometimes can be stuck, but can also charge. And that leading, going after things that we want, what I value. And that manifestation of Venus as morning star. And when she was seen as two different stars, she was even given separate names. And so as morning star, she was called Phosphorus. And it translates into light bringer. So she's literally bringing the sun. That's that warrior goddess, earth goddess energy. She's leading the charge, carrying the sun on her back, if you will. And that's part of that Taurian energy of wanting to show what is valuable, wanting to illuminate what is of importance, and can be stubborn in that. There's a quality to Taurus that can still have some of that Aries early perspective because it is so early in the zodiac. That is, this is what I value and I'm not going to deviate from that, which in some ways has a toddler-like quality to it, but it still is this leading the charge energy. And so that is where we can see in this second sign, looking at it from a more of a psychological developmental perspective, that because it is still early days, it's still early in the zodiac, that while it's not as young and naive and acting for the sake of acting that we see in Aries, there's still this early maturity that's happening in the sign of Taurus. I think of it more of the toddler, the young child that is, mine, this is mine, this is mine. And the way in which they express that or they hold on to things, that can be very Taurian as an energy. It doesn't mean Tauruses all act like toddlers, but there's a quality to the possession and possessing of things in Taurus that can look very much like a toddler sometimes, of not wanting to share one's toys and working on learning to be themselves, and that individuation that happens as children get older, that requires self-esteem, that requires having a sense of self-worth separate from the other people in their lives. They're learning to have a relationship with what they have. And so that is true regardless of age, right? So the toddlers learn that, but we, wherever we have Taurus, learning to have a healthy relationship with what we have and what we don't have, and not being possessive and not being flighty or so dismissive of what we have that we're not valuing it either, right? It's finding that sweet spot to value our possessions and not be overly attached to them. And that's that knife edge that Taurian energy is walking, is valuing but not clinging, not being possessive in it being tied to possessions. So there's a lot I could say about Taurus and Venus in more detail, but I think for the purpose of this series of shows, I'm really wanting to give you more of an overview and then provide you with the story, since this is Mythic Sky Storytime. And then after that, I'll lead you through a guided meditation. And there's lots of different myths that we could look at. Venusian myths, looking at different stories with Venus herself, or stories of bulls. and how that is related, I just quickly always think of one of the manifestations of Taurus is the story of Ferdinand the Bull, the children's story. Feels like a very Taurian archetypal expression. But for the purpose of this episode, I thought I would tell you the story of King Midas that's often very truncated and shrunk down and made into a children's story, but there's more complexity to it. A lot of it ties into the archetype of Taurus and the different things that Taurus represents. That part of that is Venusian, part of it is connected with the natural world. And King Midas this particular story goes back to ancient Greece. So King Midas was the king of a beautiful but not particularly wealthy kingdom. And he was a kind leader. He was very benevolent. And one day, as he was walking through his kingdom, walking through the land, he came upon Silenus, an old and disheveled man asleep in his rose garden. And taking pity on the man's situation, Midas invited him home for some food and drink and to clean up. And taking advantage of the king's generosity, Silenus stayed for 10 days and 10 nights. And on the 10th night, he announced that he would be leaving in the morning as his traveling companion was looking for him and he needed to catch up with his friend. However, Silenus told Midas that he would need some help in connecting with this friend, with this traveling partner. And would Midas be willing to assist him in his journey? And Midas agreed. So together, the next morning, the two men set off until they came to a vineyard. And in this vineyard, they found Silenus, his traveling companion, Dionysus, the god of wine. And he's often also associated with debauchery, but pleasure, really. That's where he gets tied in with the idea of debauchery, but it's wine and pleasure and indulging in the finer things. And with exuberance, Silenus shared with Dionysus that King Midas had been really generous, taking him in over the last 10 days and feeding him, giving him somewhere to stay. And Dionysus was so grateful that Midas had taken care of his good friend that he asked him how he would like to be repaid. "What would you like?" he asked. "Name your reward. Anything you desire, I can provide." And staring at the god, Midas said, "You mean I can ask for anything?" Thinking not only of himself but of his kingdom and how beautiful it was, but its somewhat dilapidated state and the need for resources to help his kingdom. Without giving it too much thought, he responded, "I want everything that I touch to turn to gold." And with an impish smile, Dionysus asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," said the king. "Well then," said the god of wine, "go home, bathe in wine, and go to sleep. And tomorrow you will find your wish granted." The next morning, having forgotten about his conversation with Dionysus, Midas woke up with a spring in his step and went for a walk in the garden to smell his beautiful roses. Walking amongst the bushes of the beautiful flowers, he bent over to smell a particularly beautiful one. But as his fingers grazed the petals, it instantly transformed into solid gold. He touched another, and the same thing happened. The moment his fingers touched the petals, they transformed into glittering gold. What was once a garden of multicolored, rare roses is now one of the most valuable treasures in the land. Midas danced and shouted with joy at his good fortune. His exuberant shouts caught the ear of his wife, who came out holding their infant daughter to see what was going on. Running up to her, he hugged them both tightly as he exclaimed, "You won't believe it. Everything I touch turns to gold, and all I But he stopped short, for there before him was no longer his wife and infant child, but the most beautiful sculpted gold statue of a woman and child he'd ever seen. Sure that there must be a way to reverse what he had just done, Midas continued to touch things around him, transforming them to gold. He was convinced that this was the key to his kingdom's prosperity. And having spent much of the day running around transforming objects into priceless golden replicas, he sat down for a hearty meal. But as soon as his lips touched the goblet of wine, this too transformed into solid gold, as did every morsel of food he attempted to eat. Hungry and defeated, Midas lay atop his now solid gold bed and sobbed himself to sleep. That night, Dionysus came to him in a dream. Taking pity on him for his foolish wish, Dionysus agreed to reverse the spell because Midas had been so kind to Silenus, the god's dear friend. In the dream, the king was instructed to wash his hands in the river Pacatolus. In so doing, the enchantment would be lifted, and whatever he washed in the flowing stream would be restored to its original state. When he rose, Midas did what the god had instructed in his dream, and as promised, the waters of the river lifted the enchantment of his golden touch. And he spent the next several days bringing things he had touched, including his wife and daughter, to the river to return them to their original state. In the time of ancient Greece, the river Pactolus was a great source of gold and silver. And as you can see in this story, we see many of the themes of the sign of Taurus. Next, we're going to move into a guided meditation for you to explore the meaning of this sign for yourself. So before we do, find a place that you can sit comfortably, and I will lead you into a guided meditation. So to begin this meditation, we're going to start with some belly breaths, just to really get you in your body and have you present, have you ground, particularly given that this is a Taurian meditation. And if you haven't done belly breaths before, you want to breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth deeply both times. I'll be counting for you, so you want to breathe in for the count of 4. You'll hold at the top and then exhale completely for the count of 4. Hold again at the bottom and then inhale deeply again. And I will count you through the breathing before we move in to more of the meditation and guided imagery. So with your eyes closed and sitting comfortably, you want to breathe in deeply through your nose, filling your body with oxygen. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. And now exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. And inhale through your nose completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhaling through the mouth completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Inhale through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. One last time. Inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. And exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Now continuing to breathe deeply, but in your own rhythm and in a way that you feel comfortable. We're going to bring our attention to each of the 7 chakras, so that as you move into this meditation, you are protected in scintillating gold light. And the process of getting there is connected to you connecting to your chakras. So bringing your attention first to the base chakra, the root chakra. This is found at the base of your spine. It is what grounds us to the earth, to Pachamama. It is where you find your grounding and stability in your body, in your life. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to sacral chakra or second chakra. This is found just below the belly button. And this is your yin and yang, your internal receptive and directive sides. Your ability to pause or act. It is connected to the reproductive organs, and so it is connected with our passion. And on an inhale, bring your attention to the solar plexus. This is the center just above the belly button. Solar plexus, sun center. It is the center of power. And emotion. And on an inhale, bring your attention to heart chakra, located at the center of your chest. This is the center where we are able to love and be loved, accept love and project love. Our ability to be compassionate and generous to ourselves and others. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to throat chakra, center of your throat, the center of speech and communication, our ability to speak our truths and listen to the voices of others. And on your next inhale, bring your attention up to your third eye, found in the forehead, just above the eyebrows, center of the forehead. It is a chakra associated with vision and wisdom. Our capacity to see truths and get clarity And on your next inhale, bring your attention to crown chakra. This is the very top of the head. It's where we connect to the divine. Often, the crown chakra in religious art is depicted with a halo. It's our connected with our own divinity and our connection with the divine, with God, goddess, spirit, universe, whatever your language is for the divine. This center helps you connect with that, with your higher power, with your God. And having connected with that center, we're now going to bring the scintillating light, gold, sparkling light that chakra possesses. Bring that back down through the chakra channel so that as we move into the meditation, you are protected and cared for and safe. So on your next inhale, bringing that gold scintillating light that is coming through the crown from the divine, back through the chakras, through the third eye, clearing away any fogginess when it comes to your vision, wiping away the illusions and confusions. And on your next inhale, bringing your attention to throat chakra, let this scintillating gold light heal blocks you have had around speaking your truths. Times where you wanted to speak up, but were afraid to. Times where maybe you spoke too soon and weren't listening to those around you. And on your next inhale, bringing your attention to heart chakra, let this scintillating gold light help to heal wounds that have lived there. Wounds around value, of feeling valued, of being able to express to those you love how much you love them. And on your next inhale, bringing your attention still further down to solar plexus. Let this light help to heal issues with power. You feeling comfortable stepping into your power, how you respond to those who are in power. And on your next inhale, bringing your attention down to sacral chakra, helping to bring into balance your receptive and directive sides, for both are required, but not at the same time. May it help you to know which is called for in a given situation. Now bringing your attention all the way down to root chakra, base chakra, helping to ground you, helping you to heal issues around discipline, around grounding, around being comfortable being in your body and being present. Let this scintillating gold light of the divine help you to feel comfortable being here in this moment in your body. And now bringing your attention back to your third eye, to the center of vision, this chakra in the middle, in your forehead. Having it shine out like a beacon of clarity. Imagine you are walking along a wooden trail. You can make this wooded trail look like anything you want, whatever type of trees you want there. Maybe they're pine, maybe they're maple, maybe they're birch, whatever kind of wooded trail you want to be walking on. See yourself walking along a path with light coming through the leaves and shadows dancing along the path as you walk. And as you walk, you've come upon a magnificent tree. Tall and strong, it looks like it could touch the sky. And standing beside this tree is Gaia, Pachamama, whatever expression of Mother Earth, however she would show up for you. This earth goddess is standing by this tree, awaiting your arrival. And as you get to her, she embraces you, filling you with love and compassion for yourself and your time on earth. And as she releases you from her embrace, you begin a dialogue with her, standing beside this ancient, magnificent tree. You share with her where you may have been struggling to value yourself. See your beauty, see your worth in the world. And in turn, she gives you some ideas about how you can shift your perspective, what you can do to recognize your value, to see your beauty and your magnificence. Ask for any clarifying questions that come up. If what she says seems confusing or difficult to take in. And perhaps some of these issues around value may have to do with money and resources. How do you change your relationship with this? How do you improve it? Not so you have more money, but so that you have a better relationship to money, with money. What does she recommend so that you can live in abundance in all its possible manifestations? And as you stay in dialogue, see if there's anything else that comes up for you, any questions that she may be of help with. Perhaps you're unsure about where to place your loyalties. How do you value yourself and those around you in a healthy way? How do you have a better sense of where to place your loyalties? For nothing is absolute, but perhaps she has some ideas of ways you can better assess where to place them. And before you part ways, ask her if there's a way you can reconnect with her when you are struggling to recognize your worth, or you're struggling with a scarcity mentality when it comes to money or other resources. What does she recommend as a way of reconnecting with the energy you feel here by this ancient tree? And thanking her for her love and her insight. Ask her if there is a way that you can honor her, honor the earth for all of the support she has given you today. What might she want in return? What reciprocity does she feel is appropriate? In parting ways in whatever way feels appropriate, turn around and walk back through the wooden trail the same way you've come. Noticing now that the light is starting to fade as you make your way through the trail and back into the room and back into your body. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. And I recommend you grab a journal or wherever you like to take notes. Perhaps it's with an app. And make note of the insights that you received today. This has been Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tad, and I look forward to continuing to have you take this journey with me through the signs. Please like or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about my work, you can go to mythicsky.com.